woke up this morning and looked at my phone, and there was a notification about animal activity in my driveway last night. And so I pulled up the video, and in the video is a juvenile fox with a pretty sizable rodent of some kind that's not quite dead. It's squeaking quite loudly while the fox is just kind of looking at it and sitting over it. And this video goes on for maybe a minute or two. And the fox eventually picks it up and smacks around the rodent and then puts it back down and stares at it until the rodent shakes around a little bit more and squeaks some more. And then the fox picks it up again and shakes it around again. And eventually, after sitting right dead center in the frame of the camera for a while, the fox and looks around, right? And the lights are now on because this is a motion-sensitive camera, motion-censored camera. And eventually it picks it up and walks away. And I found myself looking at this tragic scene, but also this majestic fox and the poor rodent. I haven't talked to my wife yet about this. I'm not sure if she's actually seen.
I don't know if that's a good move. Yeah.
I'm not going to bring it up because I think this would very much upset her to see how, the sausage is made for a fox, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty brutal death for the rodent. And what I came away from thinking was, one, I'm glad it got the rodent because we would like fewer of those anywhere near the house. And I certainly don't feel good killing the cute ones. But I'm glad that they can be food for the fox. But what I really felt like was that it's such an interesting analogy for how some buyers and sellers think about negotiation. They literally are thinking about the suffering to the other side rather than focusing on their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's human nature to really want to see the other side suffer a little bit. And good negotiation should not be like you should not have the fox and the rodent model in your head, although some people do. All right. Instead, you should be really thinking about your wins. And those wins can be things like getting the right house as the first priority, right? So getting the best possible price should be a secondary priority for most primary home buyers. And yes, there are people out there that are, these people sometimes are referred to as bottom feeders that look for distressed sellers and try to take advantage of them. And they may also go to public auctions, right? Some of these people also invest in tax liens, knowing that may give them an opportunity, an edge into understanding this property and maybe even one day acquiring it through a tax lien. And I think it comes down to who you are as a person and what your goals are, and having that kind of conversation up front with your realtor if you're a buyer, and also with the seller and the realtor, because you need to be prepared to deal with people that are not really serious buyers that will submit a super low offer to test you. And knowing your emotional reaction to that after you've been on the market a few months, maybe you haven't gotten a decent offer in those months and suddenly you're getting a low ball, preconditioning the client for this is really important, because you have to understand some people want to test you on price. And that doesn't mean you have to capitulate. Should you respond? What are the options? We have those conversations all the time with our buyers and our sellers. And ultimately, of course, our clients make the call, but we do our best to keep them from getting distracted and suddenly wanting to be in that fox rodent scenario when really they should be focusing
causing friction.
We just want to hurt the other side. Like, hold on. You're getting the right house for, frankly, a more than fair price. Maybe that should be what you're focused on. And for sellers, of course, we want to do all the work up front, make sure the house is really prepped for sale, because so many aren't, and that helps our listing stand out. And then, of course, priced right and marketed well. That's all of the secret sauce, or not so secret sauce. It shouldn't be secret at all for how homes should sell. And unfortunately, as you shared, Hamish, on our team call.
Oh yeah. Do you want me to jump into that?
I think you should, because it relates to this. Like, people telling you what you want to hear. Well, I'll let you tell the story.
Well, it hasn't closed yet. So I have a friend, and they're going through a separation, and they're partner who they're separating with, the mom is a agent, and so they went under a listing agreement at a very competitive commission, something I've just never seen before. But they maintain this kind of suspicion over the agent just because they're the mom of the partner that they're separating with, and ended up meeting with a new agent, and this new agent was much more kind of razzle-dazzle than anything else. From what I gleaned, I was trying to get, being in the industry, I was trying to get some sort of key into, or what was the defining factor of this new agent, and and it's not even tangible, but the only thing that they could say was that this agent had a big book of business, and gave them confidence that the house was going to sell. I think the other thing was, every weekend there was going to be an open house, which, sure, but as we've said, and for the most part kind of maintain, is open houses are for looky-loo neighbors, which I experienced the last time I hosted an open house, and then for inexperienced agents looking for leads as well. It's a great place to get, cold buyers or buyers that haven't really talked to any agents that are just getting their feet wet in the market. So, it was kind of this razzle-dazzle of a new agent coming in, but this new agent wanted to charge a full price commission and then also list the house. I think it was probably like $26K below what the house was currently listed at. And I had to talk with my friend and be like, hey, you're going to have a trade-off where commissions and lowering the price don't make sense anymore, and you're better off to keep the agent that you have, especially when there's this amorphous big book of business that just doesn't tell you anything or seem very confident. The new agent might seem very exciting, but at the end of the day, it's on the MLS. We do a bunch of marketing here at the brokerage outside of the MLS. This agent seemed to elude that as well, but when it comes down to commission and list price, there's a trade-off, and I don't think they'd fully consider that. So I'll let you know how that deal goes.
It's like the Steve Jobs reality distortion field that he was known for. And charisma can do that. There are people that have it naturally. There are those that work on charisma as a skill and improve their charisma. Charisma is so tangible in the presence of somebody with a high degree of charisma that they can say almost anything and you want to do business with them because it just feels like, oh yeah, this person gets it. They're so successful. They really kill it in the business. And for somebody that like us that tracks, especially here in Boulder, we track our competition very closely, and it often astonishes me how well charisma correlates to performance.
Yeah, or I guess business that they get, right?
Book of business.
Yeah.
Not performance in terms of their performance in actually working on deals together, because we work on deals with these agents
material performance. Yeah.
The actual metrics for negotiation, preparation for the listing, or representing their buyer and guiding them through due diligence, all of the things that we focus on, which are not, it's not charisma. Maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing, by the way, but I'm astonished by how the high performers are very closely.
The power of charisma, I guess. Yeah.
The high performers from a volume perspective, simply the number of deals they do is closely correlated to their charisma. But the actual performance of these agents, when you work with them over and over again, is not correlated at all with the volume they do. And buyers and sellers don't do enough business to be able to select based on their personal experience, like they do a couple of deals in their lifetime, and it's a scary thing. They're spending so much money. Sellers too, they want somebody buyers and sellers both want somebody they can trust with this very high dollar transaction. And so it's like this Venn diagram of competency, high service, charisma, and trust. Like, where are they matching? And often the service quality is the one that is not really.
Yeah, it sees a little bit less attention and
it's
and
a much
nurturing.
It's sometimes not even overlapping at all. And competency is not overlapping at all.
That's what I call it. Right, we're talking competency, I think is the word. Yeah.
I had so one of our clients, one of our buyers, I was on the phone with them earlier this week, and we're potentially working on a deal now, but we on a deal that we have not been able to come to terms on. Like we represent them as buyers, and we've been working on trying to purchased a home here in Boulder, but we haven't been able to get there on price with the seller. And the question was, geez, it's been over a month since our last round of negotiation. Has the listing agent called or reached out at all? And I'm like, nope. And he said, is that weird? And I said, nope. It's weird.
Middle of the road, yeah.
And I told him I was astonished at the very low quality of our colleagues. Not all of them. Look, the amazing ones are amazing, and we even name them frequently, but they are a minority. The majority do things like not pick up the phone and call and say, hey, look, it's been a couple of weeks. Can we get your buy? You have to work a little harder, right? What would it take to get your buyers to buy this house? Right? Like we were whatever number apart, and I can't disclose any of these things because I don't want to influence this deal that still isn't under contract. But what would it take to put this deal together? Is this a solvable issue? And we just closed one. We'll talk about this during our sales of the week, but that completely happened because, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but we had a problem that had nothing to do with the unit. It had everything to do with the financing available. It's a solvable problem. And what came up with, I suggested a creative and solvable way to make this happen for the buyer. And the buyer's agent took it back to his client and said, this might work. And they discussed it with their lender and they agreed to it. It worked. So we ended up actually closing over list to contribute a bunch of closing costs of the buy side to pay for a bunch of the closing costs for the buy. It worked. It was an easy win. Yeah. But it would not have happened if it had not been for one of the two agents in the deal. It happened to be me in this one, picking up the phone and saying, look, let's solve this issue.
Let's make something work. Yeah.
Let's talk about what it would take to get your buyer to acquire this property. And maybe it's price. Maybe you're too far apart on price. So hold on price. Let's set that aside. Let's talk about the other issues in the contract. And there are so many that you could focus on. Closing date, type of financing. There's a bunch of red herrings like money down. Right? There's a whole bunch of you could even get into the weeds on closing costs, even though there's a norm for how they're split up. You could ignore the norm, right? Yeah. You could negotiate on anything and everything, and then come back to price and see if we can inch ourselves a little closer.
Before we move a little bit too far, same thing with charisma, kind of captivating clients. I see the same thing in the dating world, right? Where a ton of people that I know that do very well, for the most part, are just fronting, right? It's more of a facade than anything. And time again, I see people fall for it and get hurt. And it's how long is it going to take? It's a human condition, it's not going to change. But me mentally, I'm how long is it going to take for you to realize that the people that are saying that they're the best and fronting and doing all these things are typically the ones that are just lying through their teeth, or it's all a show. But I've got very little faith that that fog will ever lift, Osmond, somebody's breaking into your car.
Yeah, I should mention that's probably the alarm that we shouldn't be talking about dating on this podcast, but it happens to be my contractors are here. They're working on stuff, and their car alarm just went off for some reason. I will say this, and then we need to jump into the intro of this podcast, Hamish.
Yes, we do.
And that is, I did find it, the reaction of women when I was single, after I got divorced the first time, and hopefully only time, when I was dating, if it was a woman of a certain age from a biological perspective, yeah, you need to. That cat's got a lot to say, Hamish. Mr. Balls wants in on this conversation. So if it was a woman of a certain age and she was looking for a serious relationship, one of the first questions I would ask on the very first date was, where are you with the baby thing? Because knowing my timeline, needing at least 3 years of serious relationship before we put a ring on it, right, meant that 3 years of building relationship.
And with that,
I had one request from those guys to not be noisy outside today, but it's okay, no big deal. So yeah, it was surprising when I asked that question on a first date, because I felt like there's a moral responsibility to be very upfront with people that want babies and have a biological clock. And if your timeline is not going to line up with their highest or remaining fertility years, you're possibly
get that expectation set
first.
Yeah,
you're wasting their time. And so I would, on a first date, if they were within a certain bracket on age, I would ask that question on the first date: where are you with babies? And if they said, no, I really want a family, I'm like, well, you should probably date somebody else. Like, this is fun. We could hang out and finish the date. We could finish having drinks or dinner. Typically it was drinks. That's totally cool. But you should know that that's not going to line up with, like, it's not that I don't want a serious relationship, but ain't going to put a ring on it for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
That blows your timeline. So you should date other people. And you know, the funny thing about being that upfront was it made me oddly more attractive to women. Like, rather than I expected them to be like, oh, okay, I'm out. Instead, they were the opposite. They're like, okay, let's hang out, have a drink, and have a nice date.
The biggest, I mean, we're getting into a dating pod. But the biggest thing I found, and you know what, we're just going to keep paralleling it to buyers and sellers. But if you are straight up, every party is informed. And when every party is informed, they can be less emotional, they can be a little bit more intelligent, and everybody knows where they're standing. And so knowing that off the bat lets you enjoy the moment a little bit more, or lets you be a little bit more focused in what's going on without having to worry about what if or down the line, right? Like, you've set that up in advance.
Yes, I think that's very true. Market knowledge is crucial for intelligent decision-making in all things, including dating. But just like with dating, and house purchases are also, and sales are also incredibly emotional. And that was something that surprised me when I first got in this business over 20 years ago. I expected people to be more rational. It turns out they're not rational at all. And helping people through this process sometimes means upping my emotional intelligence and basically being a sounding board. I mean, I'll never forget it. This is the last story. I'll never forget a seller who told me once they were so angry at the prospective buyers, who showed up late and then stayed late and then left the door unlocked or something, that when we got an offer, the seller wanted to counter at the list price. Yeah. And I'm like, I looked at him and I'm like, okay, but how do you think that's going to go? We've been on the market 60 plus days. We need to work on this a little bit. And he goes, you know, I know how it's going to go. I'm really pissed at these people. They were so rude. They were so obnoxious. And they're going to take my counter as an F you. And that's exactly what I'm telling them. I don't want them buying this house. F you. I'm like, okay, I see where this is going.
As long as we know.
Let's pause and let's circle back on this in a few hours, because this is super emotional and I'd like to help you sell your house. Anyway, that is not uncommon. Emotions drive the bus. Okay, with all of that, welcome to the House Einstein podcast. This is House Einstein podcast 83. I'm your host, Osman, with the House Einstein brokerage. With me also is your co-host, Hamish Crabb. And hello. We are based here in Boulder, Colorado. We work at a little brokerage called House Einstein. And this podcast is supported by the House Einstein brokerage. However, if you are thinking about making real estate decisions based on what you hear in this podcast, please don't. We strongly advise you reach out to your professional real estate advisor. If you are open to having a real estate professional relationship with us, you could find us at houseeinstein.com. That's the best way to reach us. And we're more than happy to advise you on your specific real estate situation. But otherwise, treat this like entertainment. This podcast is not for you to go buy or sell
or do dating
piece of
things.
Real estate or date anybody. It's not financial advice. It's not real estate advice. It's definitely not relationship advice. You've been warned. Don't sue us.
And with that, topics.
Okay, let's walk through our topics. None of which are dating, but we'll see if we bring it back to that. Okay, we're going to walk through our data from the month of June. We have now entered the second half of the year, and boy, the first half was something. And June data contains some surprises, so we're going to go through that specifically in Boulder County and the city of Boulder. And then we're going to talk about what does that mean? What is the data suggesting is possible given our current rate environment and the likely rate environment that's coming, plus what appears to be happening on an economic front. And how do you craft your particular buying and selling strategy given what might be coming for the second half of the year? Keeping in mind no one has a crystal ball, including us. But we're going to talk about crafting a strategy that matches current market conditions. And then we're going to enter a segment we like to call shameless self-promotion, where we talk a little bit about some of our buyers and sellers and what they might be in the market for. The next segment is called Sales of the Week. These are really lessons from recent closings. We do tend to focus on Boulder just because it's convenient, but our brokerage covers everything from the southern suburbs of Denver all the way up to Fort Collins and then into the mountain resort towns. We have coverage for all of those areas, so don't take it to mean that we don't do things in Denver. I just like talking about Boulder a lot because it's our fair city. So we've got a bunch of Sales of the Week to talk about. And then, boy, there's some really big news that just hit. Eldora is being acquired by the town of Nederland, which is huge. And we're going to talk about all the possible implications of the Eldora acquisition. And, man, I'm getting a little cramp from this morning's run. I think I need to hit some
morning 10K.
Some salt.
Yeah,
morning 10K. Okay, we're going to talk about the Texas floods, the tragedy that unfolded last week in Texas. It's a really big deal, and it has real estate implications. So does the Eldora acquisition.
Totally. Yeah.
If we've got some time, we've also got a topic related to what's happening in Rocky Mountain National Park. We may or may not cover that. And then we'll hit our Carveouts to wrap up the podcast. Carveouts is a segment of the pod where we talk about anything that is top of mind or occupying Hamish and I. And you'll have to wait for the end of the pod to capture that fun segment.
Yeah.
And with that...
And there's absolutely not time codes in the description if you are thinking about skipping ahead. That does not exist.
I thought you put in time codes in YouTube.
There are, yeah.
Okay.
Not just YouTube, it's in all the podcast descriptions, yeah.
Okay, you're joking. You're joking.
Yeah.
All right, I missed that. This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more. Okay, let's talk about market conditions. So I'm going to do this live, and this is something your agent, frankly, should be able to pull for you very quickly to advise you on your specific real estate situation. And the data analysis really should start at the city level and then drill down to the neighborhood and street level for your particular type of house or condo or townhome. But understanding what's happening big picture can guide you generally. With that said, boy, we have seen such interesting market dynamics. Right, we just closed we currently have a handful of listings, and about 3 months ago, I went through them with Hamish and gave them probabilities, and this is the one that I thought had the lowest probability, and it turned out to be the first one to close. Sometimes the data is not the full story, even if you know what you're doing in the market. But let's look at Boulder County, and let's talk about detached single-family houses, and let's talk about June data. So last month, there were 1,084 single-family detached houses on the market in Boulder County, and that's an increase of almost 29% year over year. Under contract actually saw a bit of a spike. So 318 houses were under contract last month, and that's almost 18% up year over year. 17.8 if you want to be specific. So you're seeing an increase in the pending sales that's under contract relative to inventory. But it's not keeping pace. So you're seeing 29% inventory increase and under contract increasing 18%. Closings were really a surprise. I was not expecting this much of a spike. There were 335 single family houses that traded last month. That's an increase of 27.4%.
Weren't you saying too, there's a delay, right? So these closings are technically things that went under contract, say 20 to 35 days ago or so?
Typically 30 to 45 days is going to be most closings.
Okay.
So the closings from June mostly went under contract Sorry, this is June. Yeah, the closings from June. I'm like, what month is it? Yes. These closings from June mostly went under contract in May. So when I talk about current pending sales or what's under contract right now, 318, that's more indicative of what we're going to see happen in August.
Right.
Although we're still early July, some of these are going to close out this month. And some of them may be from the previous month. Like, it's not precisely monthly delineated, right?
Yeah.
But there is a 30 to 45 day delay for most transactions. Even cash ones today are taking longer to close, and buyers are taking their sweet time with due diligence because they can.
The market is much,
the market is much softer, right? Almost 28% more almost 29% more inventory, and that's the highest inventory level. Let's look back. The last time we had inventory this high is before 2015. I do have data models that go all the way back to 2003, but I have not dug into those in a while, and it's not necessarily relevant to put a dart into the exact year we had inventory this high. If I had to guess, it would be 2006 was the last time inventory was this high, and we are way above anything in the last decade. So we're at 10 plus year highs in inventory. So you're sitting on the sidelines going, I want to wait for prices to fall, when there's a lot more selection. Well, this could be your moment. And because we saw market activity pick up dramatically in June, you probably want to get into it now. Like, I don't know if you want to sit on the bench much longer, because you might. So we're going to, well, I don't want to jump into the next segment.
It almost fuses together. So yeah, we'll get into...
Well, okay, so let's keep going through the data. And what is it? Now, I don't think there's a way to separate this, Hamish. They're merged together. So let's just hit it now. If you're a buyer and you're sitting on the sidelines, what you should be a little bit concerned with is that market activity really picked up. And normally we see a seasonal peak in May or June in our local market. And the second half of the year is a cooler time of year. The best negotiated discounts are usually near the end of the third quarter, which we are now in. So now's the time to be sifting through inventory that is older and starting to look carefully at homes that have not yet had significant price reductions. A lot of these current listings have. And if you look at closings and we might get into that in our lessons from sales of the week, but most of those have had significant price reductions. And there was one deal actually that we're not going to talk about in this pod, but it was a very high-end deal that closed with two brokers that know each other and do deals together, but it never hit the MLS. They have to put it on the MLS after it closes by the rules of the MLS, but it's a deal that looks like the buyer seriously overpaid, right? Like, I don't get why that thing sold for $7.5 million. It doesn't make any sense to me when $3+ million is saturated with inventory. So it looks like, frankly, dumb money was taken advantage of. And I don't know that to be 100% the case.
Before too. Yeah.
Right. Well, always be careful with these pocket transactions. So buyers, this is the time that you might want to get off the bench and really start to look at inventory and target homes that have been on the market a while. And normally I would say that's a September, October strategy. But given that the rate environment's likely to be lower in the future, like there's predictive markets that suggest the Fed's going to cut by at least a quarter point at the next meeting. I think the last time I heard the prediction, it was 80% probability. So there's a really good chance we're going to see rates start to drop a little more, although they're not. I don't think we're going to see 3% rates again for a really long time, maybe not in our lifetime. Yeah. But you're seeing rates stabilize and heading a little lower, and the economy in general, I know a lot of people have a hard time believing this, but the economy in the country is doing quite well. The stock market's hitting all-time highs, and you have high inventory. And if you do believe we're headed to an inflationary environment, which I believe very strongly, given the current budget that was just passed, real estate assets are tangible, hard assets. And moving money out of a fiat currency into a hard asset might be a smart move, particularly at the higher end when inventory is saturated. That's my argument. If you're sitting on a lot of gains in the stock market and you could transfer it into a real estate asset at the high end and negotiate really aggressively, $3+ million is saturated, you should be able to have your pick of the litter, so to speak. Yeah. That's probably not a nice analogy, but okay. Yeah, that's fine. You can have your pick, right? You can negotiate aggressively. You can walk away and come back in 30 days. And those sellers will be grateful for the offer because nothing's moving at the high end. Not much is moving, right? There's a lot, like 80, 90, what was it, 89%? We can do this math later, but is not under contract at the high end, like only 10 or 11, 8% or 12%, a very low percentage of inventory above 3 million is under contract. So get off the fence if that's your asset allocation strategy. And unlike crypto, I don't think real estate is at risk at the same level for quantum computing cracking what, right? Like there will be fraud. There always is fraud, but I feel like it's a lot easier to steal
tangible
crypto assets,
yeah,
right, than it is to steal your real estate. So consider it. And of course, you can't live in a gold bar, right?
Yeah.
And Boulder real estate is one of the safest real estate markets in the country. It's one of the most attractive from a quality of life perspective. I can just go on and on. So buy side, now's the time. Now let's talk about sell side. Sell side, boy, if you're still believing the magic and rainbows and fairy tales of it being a seller's market, you really should wake up, because even at the entry level, we're seeing buyers be much more selective. And you need to prep your home properly, which includes dealing with deferred maintenance and obvious issues with the property. And sometimes that means hiring a really good staging company that can overcome those deficits. We've done that before, where we knew we had an issue and the stager solved it and created a living space in a room that we were like, what do you do with this space? And it's not throwing down a couple of yoga mats and two little exercise dumbbells. Like, you sometimes need a lot more thought into how you stage a home. And clearly professional photography and videography drives traffic to listings. So you can't sell the house unless you're getting showings. And you're not going to get showings if you're not marketing the home. And marketing it on the MLS alone is really lame. It does not give you the exposure that you get by marketing across social media and paying, frankly, feeding the Zillow machine, which we reluctantly have started doing. Morally, I don't like Zillow.
I think that's all we could talk about, right?
Yeah, I'm contractually obligated to not even talk about that relationship. So all I will say is morally, I don't like Zillow, but I'm paying them. So there you have it, and that's for the benefit of our sellers. And that's the current market for detached single-family houses. Let me talk about prices, because prices have come down. And when you look at a smaller market like Boulder, remember, we're only looking at 335 sales. That's not a huge data set. I have not done the full analysis, but we could talk about the median sale price in that data set. That was $855,000 in June, down 1.5% from a year ago. And price per total square foot, also very relevant, also worth looking at, down 0.9%. And when you look at the data across not just a couple of months, you look at it like across a couple of years, you see this huge spike in 2022 and then a cratering. So it went from March, where it spiked, and then it cratered in November the same year. And since then, it's sort of been just gradually inching upward. So this is typical of the Boulder real estate market. I can show you this. There's something in biology called punctuated equilibrium. And things sort of stabilize for a while, and then there's suddenly a change. And I see a very similar pattern in Boulder real estate, where it's sort of gradually creeping up, and then suddenly there's an upturn that boosts prices substantially. We're in a steady up period. It looks relatively stable. And I think, again, I think this points
knock
to...
on some wood there.
Yeah, I think it points to the market becoming more balanced between buyers and sellers across the whole board, and completely imbalanced at the high end. At the high end, it's just... In fact, if you came to me with a $3 million listing and a lot of attitude about how great the house is and not willing to do any work, the answer would be no thank you. I don't need a whole bunch of high-end listings that don't sell. We need to do the work to sell them. So, okay. That's our walk through the data and some thoughts on what you should be considering on the buy and sell side. Let's look at attached dwellings in Boulder County.
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay.
You're good. I thought we were wrapping up the close all of it, and it's like, oh, I've got stuff, but go through the data first, and then we'll chat.
Well, we have two options. Do you want to talk about the city of Boulder, or do you want to stay with the market for single-family houses, or do you want to talk about Boulder? I don't want to talk about both. So we could stay at Boulder County and talk about attached dwellings, or we could dive deeper into the city of Boulder and stay with single-family houses. You pick.
I think let's do attached dwellings, because as far as my read is that those are getting the inventory for those is just continuing to stack, and it ties into our shameless self promo and our sale of the week. So I think it's gonna kind of wrap pretty well.
Yeah. For those that don't know, the city of Boulder is within Boulder County. Boulder County also includes Longmont, Lafayette, Lyons, Louisville. These are often referred to as the L's, and other places too. Like it includes parts of the mountains, Nederland, Jamestown, Ward, and of course all of unincorporated Boulder County. So all of that is sitting within Boulder County, and that's what we're currently discussing. So attached dwellings in Boulder County, there were 563 on the market last month, and that's an increase of 37% year over year. Pending sales. Let's talk about sales first, and then we'll talk about pending sales.
Okay.
Sales, 135 condos and townhomes traded hands last month, an increase of 26.2%. So market sees 37% more inventory last month, year over year, and sales were 26% more year over year. And that's after many months of sales being much lower than previous year. Really. We're seeing a spike in activity, but that spike in activity is not keeping pace, even though there was a spike, with the increasing pileup of inventory. Pending sales, there were 98 pending sales last month, and that's just an increase of 1%. So based on that, July is probably not going to continue to see this activity, but we might be surprised. And if the market truly is, I usually like to see 2 or 3 months of sustained activity before I declare, okay, the market's shifted.
But that big of
that big of a spike in June for closings, both for attached and detached, should catch your eye. And given that rates are likely to decrease in the future, and that our economy is no longer struggling, and that the stock market's hitting record highs. I saw that expression, Hamish, and what's really interesting is that Boulder is a very liberal place and a very blue city. And
for what it's worth, that expression was, I thought you were going to talk about Boulder's economy, not the national. Yeah.
Well, okay, but see, our Boulder's economy is not removed from the national economy.
Of course
but
not,
there's a sentiment, okay? If you did like the sentiment of Boulderites for how they feel about how things are right now, they're gonna be profoundly negative. Like most people feel pretty bad, and are deeply concerned about what's happening at the national level, to the point where I feel like everyone needs to turn off social media for a month and like go outside. But there's bad stuff happening. I don't want to be Pollyannish about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
But nationally, just pure economics.
All the indicators for the economy that have classically been used for, say, the last couple of decades all point to a very strong economy. Right. So by the books, things are looking very good.
By the numbers, things look good, but the way that people feel is profoundly negative. And yet real estate is impacted by how people feel. It's 100% a major purchase, and so if they're not feeling good and confident, they're not like we could see a longer downturn in Boulder than other places because of how tied our community is to the federal labs. For such a long time, I was saying the federal labs are sort of immune to the economy. They're not.
Yeah. And that's where my expression came from. I was like, man, seeing the news come out for NOAA and NIST and NCAR. Yeah.
Oh yeah, massive. Massively negative. And CU, with DEI under attack and universities in general being quite targeted by the administration, and also the incredible cost for higher education. There's a risk
blue states altogether too.
Right. Blue states.
I've seen people saying that Colorado should just budget for not getting any federal funding. That's a wait and see, though.
I can't imagine what that would do, but Okay, I mean, I know people have threatened that with California, that California contributes so much more than it gets back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody's ever claimed that for Colorado.
No, Colorado. It's a good time to not be a massive producer.
Okay, so we talked about closings, we talked about pending sales. Let's talk about price. The median sale price so remember, we're talking about 135 sales last month. The median sale price was $465,000. That is down 9.7% from the previous year. And when you look at the chart, which you can't see it on this program, but typically you don't see June seasonal bottoms, right? A June seasonal bottom is kind of astounding on price. 465 down 9.7 or almost 10% from a year ago. But price per total square foot, that is more telling. And here there's some discrepancy. And the price per square foot was $405 last month for attached property, townhomes and condos. That's an increase of 11.6%. So the sale price is down almost 10%, and the median dollar per square is almost up 12%, 11.6. That's a very interesting phenomena. And I've been thinking about that since I glanced at this the other day. And the only thing that makes sense to me is that newer, smaller properties are selling. So the dollar
you mean like new builds or new listings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or even just new build and new listings. So because they're smaller, the dollar per square is higher.
Right.
Right. And sellers have also cut their prices, so there's some decrease in the sticker price, but the smaller, they look cheaper, but there's like what you're not seeing is the median square foot in this to help you understand what this data means.
Right.
Because it paints such an interesting story, but the only thing that makes sense to me is smaller, newer, more expensive units are selling. And that's also what developers are very incentivized to build. Like if you look at older townhomes and condos here in Boulder in particular, but across the whole state, I think this is probably true. The older ones tend to be bigger.
Yeah.
Like we have 1,200 square foot condos and townhomes, or even bigger in town.
Yep.
We currently have one that's like almost 3,000. It's over 3,000 square feet. It's part of a triplex.
Massive.
You would never build that today because the cost to build on a dollar per square foot basis is so high that it just makes sense to. You could put 3 condos in that and make a lot more money.
I'm wondering if this uptick, kind of going forward on this, newer, smaller condos, are there developer incentives for buyers, making it a little bit easier for them to get into these more expensive dollar per square foot places than a private seller with an agent,
I mean, Hamish, you're so humble because that's true. I
know.
Developers. You're so humble asking the question. Let's
educate. Yeah.
You know the answer,
yeah.
Right? And I appreciate your humbleness, but yeah, of course, the new builds have all sorts of incentives built in. They can buy down the rate. They like to throw in things like free upgrades, which are not free at all. They're just built into the price. It's smoke and mirrors shenanigan marketing, right? Your choice is really crappy. Look, it starts in the 300s, but you have plywood for countertops. Or you can, take the builder upgrade package for only $25,000, but you're getting $50,000 worth of value. Mm-hmm.
It's like options on a new car. They're never worth what they're.
Don't get me started. Can I just get heated seats and a sunroof? Instead, they're like, no, you have to spend $25,000. Right. Oh yeah, you need a subscription for the sunroof. Is probably where we're headed. It's like ridiculous with cars. That's why I think I'm done buying new vehicles. I think all the future vehicles are going to be like 20 years old. I'm becoming very curmudgeonly because of this.
We'll see. I'm hoping. God, I don't want to tangent too bad, but I'm really hoping there's a kind of resurgence of the retrofit industry. And I recently watched a little special on Edison Motors. Have you heard about them?
Nope.
Okay. I'll wait for the Carveout. But they're cool. They're doing hybrid diesel electric to kind of fill the void between like EV and combustion.
Huh.
It's pretty neat.
I've got questions. All right,
I got answers.
Let's footnote that for our Carveout.
Good deal.
But let me just close out this analysis and thoughts for buyers and sellers. For our sellers that were very aggressive and priced aggressively and adjusted quickly, they have been more successful than those that waited and hoped that 6 months ago's pricing is still today's pricing. There's a concept in real estate when you are representing a seller or thinking about selling your own home and you are trying to evaluate pricing and advising on price. And that concept is to price ahead of the curve or price ahead of the trend. Yep. And that means that if you're in a market moving up, you can price a little higher than the last sold comps and expect the market will catch up to you. If the market's moving down, you need to do the same thing and price ahead of what happened 2 months ago. And then you need to take into account seasonal factors. And of course, one more time, location, down to the neighborhood level, down to the street level, property type, age, layout, all of those things, updates, all of that affects pricing. It is not a simple analysis. And if your agent shows up or your prospective agent shows up and whips out a laptop and points to an algorithm to how they price homes, please shove them out the door. Just shove them right the hell out the door because they're not going to do the work for you to price it right. It takes a lot of work to price it right, including seeing the competition. And that so few agents are willing to do. I would guess it's like less than 5% actually physically go to see the competitors before they click the Go Active button and list it at whatever price. Instead, they rely on charisma and personality and ego to price your listing. And I mean, that might work for them to acquire you as a client, but it doesn't convince the buyer doesn't care about the ego and the charisma of the listing agent. They're represented by their own agent more than 9 times out of 10, right? They have their own agent. They don't care about that. So be careful. Okay, so that's a great way to wrap up the analysis. Be very judicious if you're out there shopping. Not all homes are worth the list price, much less paying more. And you can find some fantastic deals in this market, but it takes a little bit of work, a little bit of patience, a strategy that sometimes involves more time, and an agent, hopefully, that's acting as your advisor to bring a calm strategy, a strategy that will hopefully bring success, but helps you navigate emotions through the strategy of buying a home. It's not easy out there. So good luck. And of course, you can reach out to us if you'd like to consider the House Einstein team. All right. Shall we?
Yeah, pretty good. I think about covered it. You were talking just a sec earlier about like the buyer doesn't care about the listing agent's ego or anything. We've had buyers reach out to us and be like, do you have comps to support the list price? And I'm just imagining if we responded, yeah, I've been in this market 20 years. I intuitively know the price. This is what it is. But instead, we provide actual data and shit. So, yeah.
Well, actual data, but also sometimes when there aren't a lot of comps, to have a qualitative evaluation, right? Like, if you don't have a great comp set, there's other things you can point to. Like, show me another listing in the last year that looks anything like this. Mm-hmm. That is, let's totally do this filter, right? And we'll talk about this when this deal closes, but let's put this filter on and look for these things that sold in the last 2 years and tell me how many you find. Yep. And the reason you're not finding them is because it's a unicorn. It's a deal. Like, in order to get something that works like this, you basically have to double the price. So, put that in your hat and smoke it or whatever.
Consider.
That's such a mixed analogy. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. You shouldn't be putting it in your hat and smoking anything.
You should be wearing different caps as you're smoking.
Right.
I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. It's time. It's time for shameless self-promotion. This is a segment of our podcast where we talk about some of our active buyers and sellers. We're going to keep it kind of short on this one. We have a couple of listings that I think are worth your time to go see. If you've ever wanted to live on the far west side of Boulder and have incredible access to open space, but are just shocked at the prices that are $4, $5, $6 million for the far west side of town, well, you should come take a look at this townhome. It's part of a triplex. It's generously sized, over 3,000 square feet, has a 2-car garage, steps away from Wonderland Lake open space, and beautiful professionally manicured landscaping, plus a little living situation with its own private entrance for family, or maybe you have a short-term visitor that's attending Sundance, or maybe you need at-home care. And it also has a primary on the main. So all of these things are very hard to find. And at this price point, it's starting to look like a screaming deal. So that's our listing at 700 Poplar. And we have another property at 4585 13th Street that is a perfect spot if you want to have an office with nice frontage right on the commercial street, on a street that is quite lovely. It's steps away from the library, and there's so much improvement going in to the North Boulder community. The sub-community plan highlights that, but doesn't tell you about BMoCA building a brand new building like steps away. And
complex almost, isn't it? Yeah.
Look, the reason our office is on the same street as this listing is because I believe in the long-term improvement potential of Uptown, Holiday, the whole North Boulder sub-community is going to keep getting better over the next 20 or 30 years.
Totally.
I can't say guaranteed, okay? But that's what I believe, and I believe it hard enough to put my money there. So I don't know what else I could say about that. Nice 2-bedroom unit, and you will not be embarrassed to have friends, guests, or a date visit you in this lovely property. It's really nice. So check that out. And then let's talk about one of our buyers. Oh, you have something to say, Hamish.
I'm going to highlight it in the show notes. Is this worth talking about or no? That part.
No, let's hold off on that part.
You got it.
Okay. So let's talk about one of our buyers that are currently in the market. Lovely healthcare professionals. Oh, sorry, thinking about different people.
I was going to say.
They're not healthcare professionals. They're lovely people, lovely young family, and they are shopping for. How would you describe it, Hamish? How would you describe their needs?
I don't want to give away too much about them. They aren't averse to putting a little bit of capital into a home to making it what it is, what they want. They're looking,
they're willing to fix her upper, right? They're willing to put some money in to improve it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they're, obviously, I think everyone is kind of bad surprise adverse. Like, they don't want to open up a wall and find structural damage, but they're happy to do some reasonable upgrades and fixes. These particular buyers, from my read, very much kind of, I want to say almost like northwest of Baseline seems to be their main. Don't know if we've shown Table Mesa to them, have we?
They prefer North Boulder pretty clearly. I think that for the right property, they would consider south, but they want to be west of Broadway. Or very close to west of Broadway. Mm-hmm. And a little quirky, architecturally unique, architecturally interesting, and functional for a family. Has potential investment upside. All of these things would work well for them. Mm. And they're willing to roll up their sleeves. So, but they're very, like most of our clients, they're very savvy, very investment oriented, financially literate. And so if you have something, they're willing to pay fair value for it. They're not trying to steal it. But if what you have is, if you're reaching out to us because you think they're suckers, it's not gonna fly, right? Like, they're not gonna overpay, but they're gonna pay fair value. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you sometimes market buyers, is sellers or potential sellers hear it and they think, oh, well, they're willing to pay more than fair value, and they're not. None of our clients want to pay more than fair value.
It's our job to keep them from doing that too, or at least advise them against it.
We can't keep them, but we do our best to advise our clients on valuation and due diligence. And weirdly enough, we are often the ones turning them away from homes. Like, we're telling them what's wrong with it, and if they still love it, my rule is I'll tell you 3 times. Mm-hmm. For one client, I will only do it twice because he's asked me to only say it twice. I'll tell you 3 times what's wrong with this house and why you shouldn't buy it. But after that, I'm not going to tell it to you again, because if you really want it, I'm not going to be the person that's just, puking all over your dreams.
Yeah, you're not going to be the buzzkill at the end of the day,
Right? Like, I've told you it's a bad idea 3 times and why. If you want it 2 times and why, we'll go to 2 and why. But anyway,
I'll say too, they are reasonable and level-headed. Every property that I've gone to see with them, and then properties where there's kind of still a lot undiscovered and they need more answers to make a decision, they have been very thoughtful in the way that they're doing it. So if you have something and you're kind of unsure whether or not it would sell, give it a shot. These guys they're very level-headed.
I'm going to also add that they're kind people.
Yeah, I mean,
they're really
without a doubt, they're our clients.
And I would not say that about. I would not say that about all of our clients. Although most of them are kind people, and we like the vast majority of them. But no, these are really just warm. I really look forward to seeing them because they're just such nice, warm people. And they really appreciate our efforts, which makes me want to work harder. That's a pro tip for you, that if you really want your agent to work hard for you, try being nice to them and respectful of their time and kind. And you will find, and warm and appreciative. And if they're a good agent, they're going to work even harder when they feel that, because frankly, if you've been doing this a while, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you should be doing it because it's a joy.
Yeah.
You're doing it because it's a great business. It's fun. It's interesting. You meet amazing people. And yes, you make good money, but the money shouldn't. I mean, I could have made more money staying in the investment world, a lot more, but I just find this is more interesting and more human.
That same principle goes for the DMV. If you want them to process you quickly and be kind, you flirt with them. And I'm not saying flirt with your agent, but in anything service, if you are positive and everything, you get positivity back, and it shouldn't work that way. And you know, it'd be great if everybody was equal with how things worked, but the human condition is in all of us.
It's so funny how some people never learn that lesson, and you know it even at an early age. If you want to be treated nicely, try treating people nicely.
Yeah, like day one stuff, but you know.
I mean, some people didn't go to. I feel like they didn't learn this stuff in kindergarten.
Yeah.
I might have been a little slow. It might have taken me till middle school to figure this out.
I'd say middle or high for me too. Yeah.
But yeah,
so maybe not day one, but you know, yeah.
I mean, like, there's people that have natural charisma, or maybe are just really attractive as humans physically, and then there's people that I feel like you have to work a little harder to learn these life lessons. They don't just get it handed to them. And I certainly feel like I busted my tail to learn some of these life lessons. And it sounds like you too.
Yeah.
All right. That was fun segue. Let's move to sales of the week. These are lessons from recent closings. We have 5 properties to get through. We're going to try to get through them relatively quickly, although we're not doing too bad on time, Hamish.
Yeah.
All right. Our first one's really easy to talk about because it's our sale of the week. 4800 Osage Unit 12. And kind of an interesting deal. It caught me off guard in a way because, and I'll admit this was a fail and will not be a fail in the future for our listings, but it turned out that I learned during the open house, the first open house, from a neighbor that the complex was not warrantable. And for those that are unfamiliar with that language, that simply refers to whether the lender or mortgage originator can resell the loan to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Those are the government-sponsored entities that acquire the vast majority of mortgages, package them as securities, and then resell them on Wall Street to a variety of investment institutions. And that mechanism historically has resulted in very low mortgage rates as well as very favorable mortgage terms for buyers, like 30-year fixed rate mortgages that are the envy of the world. The reason those are the envy of the world is because of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And when a property does not meet the underwriting standards of Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, it's called non-warrantable. And so you could still get a loan, but you are now looking at a loan from most likely a regional lender. And that here locally in Boulder, the biggest players are Elevations and First Bank. There are others, but those are the biggest ones. And they don't want to sell you a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. They want you to do a 5 or 7 year adjustable rate mortgage, which is not a 5 or 7 year mortgage. It's usually has a 15-year term, or it could have a longer term, 20-year term, but the rate is only fixed for 5 or 7 years. And the reason for that is that they are keeping this loan in their portfolio. Remember, for the lender, the loan is not a liability. For you, it's a liability. But for the person who gave you the money, it's an asset. And they're getting paid back that money, and they would like to have less risk. And one of the ways they have less risk, or risk that matches their risk appetite is by shortening the duration and having an adjustable rate for a period of time, fixed for a period of time and then adjustable. And that's how they price things. And it's not a bad deal, but it limits the resale market. And in this particular case, the non-warrantability issue related to the age of the roof, which is sort of ridiculous because the association had plenty of reserves to pay for a roof. They just didn't want to do it. And because of the age of the, and that, changed the insurance policy to an actual cash value policy on the HOA, which then impacted the warrantability of the unit. They're still planning to replace the roof by 2029, which is only 4 years away. And you can refi it. It'll likely happen even faster. Once it's warrantable, you could refi it with a Fannie or Freddie. Getting this property, so the property itself, our client did an amazing amount of work to prep it. And we, of course, did fantastic photography. We had the property staged, videography. You'll see this all over our socials, even though this is not a high-end listing, right? We're talking about a $500,000 two-bedroom condo. But once I learned that unfortunate news about the warrantability, I realized we have a problem, and we're going to have to work harder. And that first weekend, we actually had, I believe, 2 buyers super interested. One submitted an offer. And then we told them, I'm sorry, it's about warrantability, and they pulled the offer. And the other people pulled the offer too. Both people pulled their offer once they figured out the warrantability issue. We waited a few days, and then I picked up the phone and called one of the buyers. I think I called both of them, but one of them was willing to work through this issue. And that's how we came up with a creative solution. So that involved a list price that was high, a sale price higher than list, money going back to the buyer to help buy down the rate. And that, it worked. It's a win-win, but it did not happen automatically. It happened because the agents involved were willing to work a little harder, and our lender, which happened to be through Elevations Credit Union, did a good job also working a little harder. And the deals just closed yesterday. So we're really happy for both the buyer and the seller. And as far as the product goes, you think about, where can you buy a 2-bedroom townhome in Boulder that is not in the student zone and is nicely finished, like an young professional, granny flat, nobody that wants to live next to students. Like, what are your options under $500,000 or even close to $500,000 in Boulder? And they don't exist. Like, it's really hard to find something
good
this
yard
nice.
Too. Yeah.
With a garage and a really nice backyard, like all of the things. So, and despite this little snafu, our seller was very clear. He said, actually, this HOA does a good job. It's just, this was a stupid decision on their part. And it cost me money. And I was like, some people don't think through all the impacts of a decision like that. So that is our lesson from 4800 Osage. And the key takeaway is, if you have a non-warrantable condo or something with a cloud on it, right? Something that's going to make it harder to sell, you need to choose an agent that's going to work a little harder. It doesn't have to be me. There's lots of agents out there. And you should talk to them about the strategy to deal with this particular deficit, if you know it. If you don't know it, you can ask the question generally. Like, talk to me about the things that might come up in a transaction and your philosophy or your strategy to kind of resolve those with potential buyers. Like, how are we going to play this? What are the odds I'm getting a bidding war the first weekend? What happens if I don't? What happens if I'm on the market 60 or 90 days? How are you advising me on pricing throughout the life of the listing? What are you doing besides just sticking it on the MLS with, so-called professional photography? What else are you doing? Help me understand how you're going to drive traffic to it. Are you doing open houses, but is it worth doing an open house? Walk me through what that's like and whether we'll see a buyer or not come from an open house. And Hamish, by the way, you and I might disagree about it. I used to be very negative on open houses, and now I'm very positive on open houses. I think we should be doing them every other week at a minimum on most of our listings because it does increase exposure.
Yeah, no, I get it. I put some nuance when I was talking about it earlier in the pod. But yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's good for 3260. That's good for 4800 Osage. Let's move to our next one. I got to open up the right window. Hang on a second. Open Sesame. Okay. Sale of the week, podcast 83. All right, we talked about 4800 Osage. Let's jump to the other end of the price spectrum and talk about 3260 Lafayette. So I saw this house when it was on the market back in 2024. So last year, right? It was listed last July, July of 24, at 1.89, and it did not sell. Okay, after about a month, the seller cut the price to 1.69. They cut the price $200,000, and it didn't sell. And eventually, the listing expired after basically a year. So I think the listing agent had a year-long agreement, and it eventually expired in June. And during that time period, when they pulled it off the market from September through when it came back on the market this June, it had substantial renovation. So the renovation, though, was mostly cosmetic. So I remembered this listing, and then I took buyers to come see it again, different buyers, this summer when it was on the market, and I was like, I know this house.
Yeah, it's familiar.
It's familiar. It's just wearing a different outfit, right? Yeah. Like something has changed, and mostly it's looking like cosmetics. And as we did the tour, it hit me as I went into the lower level, because the lower level had a musty smell. And I thought, oh, now I remember this house, because when I showed it last year, the day of the showing, there literally was water or dampness on the floor in the lower level, and there were air movers.
Jeez. Right?
So these big industrial air movers to dry up the wetness, and now there's mustiness. So, when water issues happen, okay, the question is, have you removed all the damaged material, and have you addressed the source of the water? And if you've done those two things, you're usually fine. If you've just addressed the cosmetics and not the source of the water, or you haven't removed all the damaged material, you can get this musty smell. And I was like, that's what triggered it, the memory of, oh yeah, I saw this last year. I know you'd think I would remember houses that well, but I see a lot of houses, right?
They blur, yeah.
Okay, so they brought it back this summer at 2.2, and it was available for a little over 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks. It was available for 10 days, and it went under contract, so under 2 weeks, and it sold. And it sold at a substantial, even though it had only been on the market 10 days and had a bunch of updates, it sold for $2 million. So a little more than 10% below the list price. That's kind of a substantial discount. I mean, I was surprised by that discount. I wonder if it reflects, it certainly reflects a cash deal and a fast close. But I also kind of wonder if it reflects inspection issues that were discovered. In any event, I don't really, I'm not saying this house has inspection issues. And the current listing agent is totally different than the original listing agent. All I'm saying is that it was a very interesting deal, and it was mostly a cosmetic remodel. They did some nice things, and at the end of the day, they sold it for $2 million. I don't know how much they spent on the remodel, because remember, they couldn't sell it at 1.7 last year.
Yeah.
And they cleared $300,000
more. I'm wondering what their
more.
Numbers do, yeah.
Right. So what we don't know is what their real numbers are. And one of the due diligence things that you should do with your agent, if you're a buyer, is pull the permit history, which won't give you the exact number, but will at least give you the estimate of the number according to the permit office, as well as what is and is not included in that permit. You should also verify the permits were closed out. And if possible, get a contractor list, because if it turns out that the people that did the work cut corners, right, you at least have some potential recourse. But if the seller disappears into the sunset, you may have a hard time getting that recourse. Unlikely to be the case, right? The sellers in this particular situation were not an LLC. Their actual names were on the deed, so you may have recourse if it was shady work done. But remember, buyers are acquiring property as is, where is. That's how it's written into the contract. And caveat emptor is the buyer beware is the number one going concern when it comes to real estate assets and acquisitions. You have to do your due diligence. So our buyers decided it wasn't the right house, and that was before they smelled the musty smell. And when we went into the basement and we all smelled it, they were like, ooh, what's that? Confirmed. I'm like, oh, right, like, let's move on. But what's interesting is this property may influence their decision to pursue a different house. It helped, even though they didn't write an offer, seeing it helped them level set the market, and seeing what it sold for helps them level set the market.
Yeah. I think showings are just so helpful in general. This street, the other side of the street is the super in vogue, popular on the ridge with the views. This is that street, right? We've talked, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, what's interesting is so parts of Lafayette Drive are on a perch.
Yeah.
And have an amazing view. And it's typically the south side. This house is on the south side, but around the bend, right? Mm-hmm. It curves around, so the house actually faces east, and therefore it does not have the view. And the tricky part of analyzing Lafayette Drive and Longwood, it's also true of the Alpine Balsam Peninsula in the center of town. You have to have at least a rule of thumb for homes that have a perch and a view and homes that don't. And this particular perch along Longwood and Lafayette isn't like a 10% increase in value. It's probably a 20% or more increase in value because it's that epic. But this house does not have it. But you will get the benefit of having those people as neighbors you envy forever. Which, interestingly, it's really funny.
You can tell people you live in Lafayette.
I had clients that, most people won't know Lafayette, but I had clients who once told me, I can't buy this house because the house next door is so amazing, and I'm going to be looking at that house every day. I just can't live with the fact of spending this ridiculous, they called it ridiculous, a very large amount of money, and then have to look at what somebody else has right across the street. I just can't deal with that envy in my life. And I was like, okay, let's move on. Great house.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Pretty much, it is the thief of joy, right? And how are you not going to compare to your neighbor with the epic house who bought it 20 years ago for like a peanuts? And now you're like, right? You're just you can't handle it. You can't handle the joy or the jealousy. All right, let's talk about our next sale of the week and lessons from it.
Yeah.
10391 East Goose Haven Drive in Lafayette, and this is such an interesting property. First things first, this little subdivision, Goose Haven, doesn't trade very often, right? Like, I have not seen a lot of listings and sales here in my 20 plus years, right? I didn't do the math.
Totally new to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a hidden little pocket. And when you see in a listing is these beautiful water views and a very generously sized, well, I guess it's not very, a generously sized 4,300 square foot house, right? It's functional for most people. It is a 3-car attached garage. The house was built in the 90s, a 25,000 square foot lot. And, they've done a good job of highlighting the private drive in photo number 2. Like, you have a private drive. Of course, that also means you have a private expenditure for maintaining that private drive. But the photos are great. It really shows the nesting the waterfowl, they're not nesting. They're just waterfowl in the ponds. And kind of classic architecture house from this era, but the house is designed to feature those views. The kitchen could use a bunch of updates, like the tile's old, the cabinets are old, but it's functional, right? Like, you could do a kitchen remodel, or what one of my clients used to call do a cosmetic, and do a cosmetic, and you probably have a much more livable house.
Yeah.
The thing that we would have warned our clients about is that, first, these types of ponds sometimes have a history, right? Like, this was a gravel mine, almost certainly, right? It's called if you look at the maps on the south, on open maps, open street maps, it's labeled the Goose Haven Pit right to the south of there. And on top of that, you have you have one current airfield. And I'm not entirely sure what this airfield is used for. The Laners Hayfield Airport. Is it no longer operational at all? So
Could
2
be
areas
ag,
of due
too.
diligence.
Yeah.
2 minimum, maybe 3. One, floodplain, which this property appears to be just outside of the 100-year flood, and we're going to get back to this when we talk about the news. The second area of due diligence is what was unearthed in the mining period and what happened to the tailings. Like, is this pond full of toxic water, or is this pond, right? Like, the geese on it don't know. But you might want to know, particularly if you have a family that's going to be like paddleboarding on this thing, right? Like, you may want to know if that's a toxic situation or not. And then the third piece is air traffic. Air traffic some people are very, very sensitive to it. So your due diligence should include visiting this property on a Saturday during the peak time that general aviation might be flying, to see if this is going to be an issue for you or not. But overall, great. I think it's a great property. I'm surprised it took 30 days to go under contract, but it is a little out of pocket. You have to drag, in my experience, you have to drag clients to see stuff that's a little this far out of field. But $2 million for a home that is this substantive, built in the 90s, big lot. They did discount it by $100,000, so what is that, 5% below list? That's straight up the fairway. Cash buyer. I happen to know both buying and selling agents. And I think they found a great little house. I hope buyers did their full and thorough due diligence. And these lakefront houses in Colorado and Boulder County, there are not a ton of them. And if you're looking for that, there's a handful of options.
This reminds me of the homes we checked out for Hearth and Stone that were surrounding McIntosh Lake up in Longmont. Do you remember that one that we went and saw?
I was just about to say McIntosh Lake is your other option, way far north.
Way further.
But McIntosh Lake is open space, and people do actively recreate. It's managed by, I'm not sure if it's the city of Longmont or if it's Boulder County that manages it. I think it's Boulder County. It has rules for whether you can use powered watercraft or not. It also has a killer trail that goes around it. So totally different animal, but also maybe less favorable location. And then there's a couple of other reservoirs, some of which have incredible views. The one that's the Baseline Reservoir, of course, I think might be the premier based on how close it is to the city of Boulder. Yeah. And it has like a private swim club that takes a decade to get into. All of that sounds like a reason to live in that neighborhood, but that price point, add another $1 million.
Yeah, easy.
And half the size house.
Yeah. There's also like this weird mismatched tile in the kitchen, and I'm not sure if they did a repair job but couldn't find the exact tile that they needed. I'd want to know what the story is on that. Maybe it's a seller. Who knows? I
mean, supposedly the credit was for older mechanicals, 3 old furnaces and 3 old AC units. I don't know why you needed 3 in this property, but the fact that really old AC and mechanicals, and then maybe mismatched tiles sort of suggests a history of that weird tile.
Right.
It sort of suggests not great maintenance, right? But that doesn't mean the house can't be recovered. It just means that it's likely you're going to find more not great maintenance, more deferred maintenance to deal with.
Yeah, totally.
And you should know that going in. It doesn't mean that it's a bad deal. You should just have a budget to deal with. And in this case, they negotiated the $100,000 for that, according to the broker remarks.
Yeah.
All right.
Shall
we move on to our next one?
We shall. Judson.
Street we know well. I've had listings on Judson, repeat clients, and it's a great spot. It also is in preferred schools. Table Mesa schools are generally preferred, the elementary schools in particular. Bear Creek and Mesa are both options. There's a little zone where you get both as an option. This is in the zone. And
1525 Judson Drive.
We're talking about 1525 Judson Drive. It's a 60s era house, and it's on a slightly bigger than typical lot because it's on the outside of a curve. 8,200 square feet in the lot. 2,574 total square feet for the house. Listed at 1.38. That was the last list price. We're going to talk about the price in a minute, and it sold for 1.35. Home itself we looked at multiple times, and it was an interesting house, but didn't really move the needle in terms of its compellingness. Felt kind of basic. Felt like it's okay, but we're original list over 1.5. Are you really getting what you want? Is it really deserving of that price point? And what's interesting is people that have the budget to go over 2 typically look at a house that's like this as kind of uninspiring. But there was really, I don't remember there being anything massively wrong with this house. I think it just got caught in the downturn in the market. And of course the kitchen layout's a little weird, right? Like you have this captain's setup for the kitchen that doesn't really have a functional island, right? It has a little wall there. Like it just, We were immediately talking about remodeling the kitchen when we looked at this property.
Redoing the siding would be on my list as well. Squiggle siding was in vogue at some point, but
yeah, squiggle plank siding, and also you're in the wildland urban interface, where you have higher fire risk. So hardy boarding the outside and going to a metal roof is probably in your future. Or should be planned for it, in addition to getting rid of that wood fencing that goes right up to the side and any vegetation that's too close to the house. But the house was just, honestly, it was just not inspiring. It was okay. And because buyers have a lot of choices, okay is no longer something that's going to really move the needle and get an offer. Originally listed at 1.55 in April. They started cutting the price, and this is like the game of let's guess the price. A month in, they dropped it to 1.5. And then 50 days in, they dropped it to 1.425. So the first cut was 50 grand. The second cut, 75 grand. The third cut, 45 grand. That was the last cut when they dropped it to below 1.4. It was dropped to 1.38 in June. And at that point, it didn't take much time. 4 days later, they had an offer, and it sold at 1.35. And so now you're appealing. When you're cutting the price like that, you're really appealing to a value buyer, not one that's turned on by the sizzle and the turnkeyness and the design, and certainly not a very large house. More one that now fits the budget, has the right number of beds and baths, is in the right school district, and there's nothing objectionable to it. But that's the deal. Judson, the street itself is great. I really like that street.
Value-wise, I think the home's pretty solid.
Yeah, this is a good value buy.
4 walls and a roof,
Well, also great location. Functional, like 3 bedrooms on the main, 2 in the basement.
Very good location. Solar.
2-car attached garage. All these things are fine.
Larger lot,
It just was, there was nothing sexy about it. And if you want somebody to spend a premium in a market that's seeing prices decrease, you have to do something sexy with your house to get it to sell. And it's not a current look, like the paint scheme, the siding, like all of those things could have been fixed for a lot less than if they spent, let's say, $100 before they listed it to make this house really shine, they probably would have seen 150. They probably would have seen much closer to their list price and not suffered on market that long. Okay, all right. Our fifth listing. 59 Eldorado Springs Drive. And I don't think we've ever talked about this little community on the pod in the past. I may have talked about it in my newsletter years ago. It is really unique. So Eldorado Springs Drive comes off of 93. And it is on the south side of open space. Actually, it really has open space on both sides. It's on the south side of the South Boulder Creek open space, which is open space I have frequented many times. But there's a resort up in Eldorado Springs and a historic pool. And there's a place you used to be able to fill your water jugs as well. I don't know if they still do that. They renovated the pool. And then it's also the base of the entrance to Eldorado Canyon State Park. I think that's what it's called. My God, my brain is drawing a blank. You can you check that, Hamish? I think that's the right name for the state park. So you've got
Eldorado
great
Canyon.
Connectivity. Yeah, I think you've got great connectivity to all the open space and trails. You have that historic and now recently renovated Springs Resort. Like it's like a swimming pool that's fed by the springs. It's not hot, but it's spectacular. It's cute. It's sort of like an artist community. And most of the homes I've ever seen hit the market are falling apart here. They're really old and typically incredibly run down. And you're also dealing with, it has a little bit of a feel like Nederland with dogs running around.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
And you sometimes get cyclists who have come through, and it's just kind of it's a funky little thing. And it's super unique in the Boulder real estate market spectrum of options. This particular house was built in 1904, and it's landmarked. But the seller did tons of things. Like it's described as completely redone and expanded. I believe it. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's very pretty.
If you wanted like a historic summer home in Eldorado, this is like, it's not. Frankly, it's unlikely that you're going to see better than this. Yeah, you could argue that maybe some of the interior finishes you could be stained different colors, a little less yellow, a little darker tones, but that's about it. Like, I don't have a lot of objections to anything in this listing, other than when you look at some of the photos, like of the basement and the foundation. Like, the foundation is built from
that's stack stone, right?
It's a mix of whatever random stuff they found. Like, there's stack stone that looks like it was chiseled. There's field stone. There's concrete that's been, layered over the top. And in the middle of that, there are wood framed. There's wood verticals in the middle of that. Like, there's a lot going on in this foundation. So, the takeaway, oh man, the cute little studio and the root cellar. I mean, there's so much going on with this property that is awesome and interesting. But that doesn't mean just because you fall in love that you don't do your due diligence. And that photo of the foundation is what reminded me that due diligence is a very deep rabbit hole for historic properties. The tricky part is trying to get that done on a new listing. This particular listing had been on the market a surprising length of time. It hit the market in February, which is not a great time to list something like this, but listed at 1.2. And after about a month, they cut it to 1.1. And then 2 months later, they dropped it another 50 to $1,050,000. And that's where it sat from May, for middle of May to early June, when it finally went under contract. And it sold for $1,020,000, which I think is an astonishingly reasonable price for something like this, provided it didn't need lots of things. And given the fact that the previous owner had done so much work on it, I think, and recently it's described as over the last year and a half, they should have all the invoices and receipts. It does not look like it was done as a flip. It looks like it was done very carefully and conscientiously. Now let's see if I'm wrong about that. Let's look at the historical ownership. Yeah, the sale history on this thing.
While you're looking there, I'm looking on the street view, and you can see kind of what it looked like prior to they'll call it a facelift, and it needed the work that it got. It didn't have gutters. It looks like they either plastered or cemented over the stack stone foundation facing the street. They also did a lot of landscaping, probably fixing some grading as well, to kind of keep the home going for a little bit longer. It looks like it had a vinyl sheeting over the roof in 2021. Maybe there was roof damage and that they were doing that to hold it over, but it's come a long way now. Yeah.
Yep. It looks like it was sold by the owner, not by an LLC. It doesn't look like a flip. And the history is a little wonky, so it would require more due diligence than we have time for in the pod. Once again, know both agents involved in the transaction. Both are great, and I think it's a really cute property and very unique in the options available in Boulder real estate. So notable for that reason. But if you're shopping in Eldorado Springs, do not expect anything else to look like this, and you might be waiting for a really long time for the right property to come along.
Yeah, retweet.
All right, Hamish. I said there was one more, but there isn't. I already covered it. So that's our sales of the week. I had one more. I removed it. It was a really, really inexpensive condo at Trout Farm that sold for like $300-ish, and it's a one-bedroom, tiny studio, one-bedroom or studio apartment, tiny little space. Basically, the only option for that
Is Trout
size
Farm,
and location.
Folsom.
Yeah,
Trout Farm. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, yeah.
Probably because there probably was a fish farm there, is my guess. But Trout Farm.
There might still be trout. Yeah.
Where do you live? I live at Trout Farm.
Yeah, hell yeah.
They did not hire marketing consultants in naming that. But we're not talking about that property.
No, we're actually going to be talking about Eldora's new acquisition.
All right, it's time for the news. Is what Hamish is trying to say.
If you tune out, you've just been misinformed.
Yeah, well, it's time for our news segment. And our first news item was just announced yesterday. This is a very big deal. And the town of Nederland issued a press release indicating that the town is buying Eldora. Eldora is our local ski resort. It's hard to call it a ski resort. It's small. and it's never been very glitzy. But it meets the budget. It's close to Boulder. You don't have to get on I-70. And it's been part of the Epic Pass, right? Or the Icon Pass. Yeah, part of the Icon Pass. And I've said for a very long time that Eldora is the answer for the congestion on I-70. And Nederland is going to continue to become more resort-like. I think I called it Aspenization, because it just makes sense. Why would you stick your family in the car, drive all the way to Vail or Breckenridge or Winter Park when you can just ski Eldora? And of course, the skiing is nowhere near the same, but it's convenient.
Yeah.
And you're not stuck in the car. So, or you're only stuck in the car at Boulder Canyon. And gradually, Nederland has seen a pretty dramatic increase in valuation, seen nicer restaurants and bars start to appear. And it's been my worry for some time that Vail Resorts or some other major, like, we don't care. We're just here to maximize value. Like some other entity that's not invested in the community of Nederland would buy this and apply a pure profit maximization principle, which involves not just the resort, but the properties around it to develop them into luxury homes and condos. It would forever change what Nederland has been.
Boulder's even weird.
Nederland is Boulder's even weirder and wonderful, quirky, hippie cousin of a tiny size. Ever since I first went there, in 2000, I was blown away by Nederland and its funkiness, and been really sad to see it becoming less mountain towny and more resorty. And this particular acquisition, in my opinion, will do a much better job to protect interests that are not just financial, interests in the quality of the community, interests in the interaction between the resort and the town. And of course, the rubber's in the details, right? The devil's in the details. And some of these devilish details include a not to exceed price, include, they don't know the exact rate. The preliminary range is 6 to 8%.
Yep.
The team that's been managing it will continue to be managing it under a 2-year agreement, which is smart. The town supposedly has full financials. And of course, this type of due diligence is massive. I've had some experience with development, and can tell you that there's lots of things that could make this fall apart. But they've announced it, and we're going to put a link to a great FAQ that will answer almost all of your questions about how this works. But it's not the most important, but let me just mention one piece. How is this getting paid for? And it's getting paid for by bonds. So Nederland will issue muni bonds, and the muni bonds will be tied to the earnings of the resort, so that the resort itself will pay for those municipal bonds. Muni bonds have some tax advantages for investors, so they typically are a pretty good avenue for institutional investors in particular, a pretty good asset for acquisition. So if they can keep the rate closer to 6 versus 8, I think that would be great. And the only caveat to all of this, the last piece I want to add, is that the town had a hard time managing its police force and decided to disband it and let the state take over policing in Nederland. My only worry is that Nederland doesn't have the expertise to manage a ski resort, which is why I'm glad to see the existing team stay on for 2 years, and they're going to hire new people and so forth. But I feel a little worried about that. But I still would much rather see Nederland buy this than an entity that's not invested in our community.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm very much hoping it works out for Nederland. Snowpack has been kind of reducing over the past couple of years, and I'm a little worried that Nederland gets into this and then there's not great snow seasons. The Icon Pass has kind of been a clever way for resorts to continue to kind of make income, and then whichever mountain gets the snowpack, skiers and snowboarders can go to then that mountain under the same pass. But long term, I sure hope snow keeps falling, and they could pivot. They've got the mountain at that rate, so yeah.
Pivot to what?
Summer camp. you know?
Like a mountain slide. I mean, they could
exactly.
They could pivot to more mountain biking.
They could host cults up there, you know? Like, they could do whatever they want. Movie night or something.
We do need a big retreat center. That would be a great place for a retreat center. And they're
Ketamine
supposedly
clinic.
going to annex. They're going to annex the whole thing. Which means they control the zoning, right? If they annex it, they control the zoning, and they're no longer subject to the 35-acre rule. It's part of the town of Nederland, local control. You brought up a great point, though, and that snow is declining.
We are working with a client who's pretty close to this, and they did an extremely good job in not letting any of this information slip, and I'm going to have to bring it up to them.
Yeah. Well, they were under a confidentiality agreement because almost certainly they knew about it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our next news story. What do you say?
I'm with it. Yeah. I don't have an article.
This one, okay, well, we don't necessarily need a news article because it's all over the news. There was flooding in the Texas Hill Country, and that flooding resulted in the tragic deaths of well over 100 people, some of whom are young children, in Camp Mystic, historic summer camp. And it has there's all this noise, or I mean, this is the 24-hour news cycle that's creating a lot of stories about whether this is related to funding being cut. I don't mean to call it noise, okay? It could be legit. But this is where some of the media is going. And the reason I wanted to bring this topic up has nothing to do with whether it relates to the Trump administration cutting funding for weather forecasting. And for the record, I will say I'm deeply concerned over that. Also deeply concerned over the attack on climate change science, all of those things, okay? But that's not what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about was a photo, and hopefully you can find this, Hamish, and link to it, that showed the location
I hope to.
of Camp Mystic. And it's possible this was AI. I'll give you that. If it's not true, that's fine. Then this is not true. But if that photo is accurate, it shows that Camp Mystic was built in an old riverbed, like a dried up riverbed. And so it's just astounding
planning
that they chose to build in the 100-year flood, or worse, or maybe it wasn't the 100-year flood, but clearly had been a floodway at some point. And it's really unfortunate because we see the same thing with real estate acquisitions by buyers, and we always warn them about flood ratings, that even though it may not be in the 100-year flood, if it's close to it, there's a really good chance that you're going to get flood damage someday. And the modeling for where the water goes is not accurate. And in fact, the flood zones are determined politically. There's a lot of political influence in what gets actually labeled the 100-year flood. I did not know that until we had clients who were experts in this field. And we were helping them buy a property. This is years ago, Hamish, before you were part of House Einstein. And they basically schooled me on it. They're like, we don't want to look at anything even in the 500-year flood, because even though there are no requirements for flood insurance, we know the reality of the floods, and we know what's happening with climate change.
Right.
And these maps are going to change, and there's going to be resistance to changing because of the financial impacts when they change. But we don't want to be anywhere close to that. And we walked away from several properties at the time because of what they determined to be too high flood risk. And so the take home, first, this is deeply tragic, of course. And yes, I certainly doesn't help our world to cut funding for weather forecasting. That's bad. And cutting funding for climate change research and mitigation, it also, I think, is bad.
Interesting strategy. Yeah.
But really, where our nexus of overlap here with this situation is where we see buyers ignore the flood zone. And it's perfectly fine if you take it into account on the price. It's perfectly fine if you are knowing if you know what you're getting into, your eyes are wide open, no problem. But if you buy not knowing, then you potentially are well, you're
just leaving the door open for, risk, right?
This could be you one day. Yeah. And what I would add is part of due diligence is also look at the topography of how the home is oriented with all of its neighbors. And if you're sitting lower than all of your neighbors in a very high rain event, you could be the one getting the flood and not anybody else. So you may want to just think about it and also consider, of course, grading around the foundation and all of those fun things. But we're going to continue to see almost certainly more and more dramatic weather events. And it could be firestorms. Yeah. It could be heavy rain events. Your road could wash out in the mountains. Like, these are the things
windstorms, like tornadoes,
How hardy is your property with regard to climate change, and what could be done to improve its hardiness? And those are the conversations that you should be having with your real estate advisor. Yeah. And there is also a strategy for getting out of the high risk zones now and moving to something lower risk.
These 100-year events seem to be happening a whole lot more. So understanding that, but everything comes down to your personal risk tolerance. And I don't necessarily this is a super tragedy where people have established prior to knowing where there is a floodplain or anything. It's very difficult to then just pick up and move. You are in a dried riverbed. That is where the community is. Well, just move. Who's going to buy a house that's in the middle of a riverbed? You're kind of in the spot that you're in. So I very much empathize with the people that got affected, and it blows to see. Hindsight's always going to be 20/20. We can take a lesson from this and kind of look forward, but it just sucks,
Did you know the 100-year floods and the 500-year floods are misnomers?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know misnomers.
They don't relate to it's not a once in 100 years. Yeah. It's a 1% chance.
Okay, yeah, so 1 of 100, yeah.
That's not once in it's called the 100-year flood, but it's actually a 1% chance of flooding. That's not zero.
Is it 1% a year or 1% a day, or
Okay, I mean,
every day you're rolling the die, or no? I'm just genuinely curious because I'm not
a floodplain expert.
Probability on that would be insane to.
I'll have to lob that to our old clients, but they help me understand it's a misnomer. You shouldn't think of it as once every 100 years or once every 500 years. That's wrong, particularly as the probability continues to increase of dramatic weather events.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And that's another, right, like you're saying, there's financial reasons the floodplain doesn't sometimes get changed, and there's political reasons too. So it's a little sketchy all the way around.
Caveat emptor. Okay, let's talk about carve-outs. Hamish, you're first. What's up?
Racetrack stuff continued. I had a track day at PPIR not too long ago, and last week I went to
what's PPIR?
Pikes Peak International Raceway. To my understanding, it's more of like a NASCAR track, just a big old oval, and then they've got a little bit of infield track, and that was lower speed, tighter corners. I'd say easier for what it's worth. And then last week I went to High Plains Raceway. And I've got this little old BMW that I've kind of built, and it's fast and a lot of fun and needs a paint job. But it's one of the few places you can really drive it like how you'd like to drive it. And the roads, I don't drive on the street like that. It terrifies me, the implications of getting caught or ruining a family or some individual's day or anything. Getting followed home, I worry about. So. I had a great time at PPIR.
Followed home by the police? What do you mean?
Or somebody that gets just pissed off at you the way you drive,
God.
Yeah, I'm just, road rage and all that stuff. I just don't want to, interact with it too much on the streets. It genuinely concerns me. I've thought I've been followed home. Maybe I'm paranoid, but I've thought I've been getting followed a few times, and they turn off once they reach the neighborhood. I'm like, shit. But High Plains, a lot of fun. way faster speed. And I went with some friends who helped me build the car back in 2020 over the pandemic. And they're a lot more... I know cars. They are like... There's a level of kind of like savantness to the amount of cars. Like Chris, I'll use him by name. When he was a kid, he used to get like a certain automotive magazine and then take every car stat from that and put it into his own journal and then memorize it. So he knows like obscure Mercury models and options and the horsepower and stuff still to this day. And he's like in his late 40s, like nerds on cars. So I'm going around the track and I'm like, I spin out, which always embarrassing. I'm there with like 8 other people. Everybody's in their modified cars. So Chris comes along and he's riding with me, and he's, you know, in the passenger seat kind of telling me which line to take and when I want to brake and stuff. And he's like, you really need to be going flat out through these corners. And I'm like, that's freaking terrifying, dude. Like, I don't want to do that. You know, I'm going like 110 and I'm supposed to take this corner flat out. Like, are you kidding me?
Oh, I didn't know you were going that fast.
Yeah, that's on the straight, the fastest I got up to. I actually picked up a draggy. They do lap overlays and lap times now on the draggies, so it's not just like straight line speed. 110 is what the GPS told me I got. So anyway, I'm doing this. He's telling me to go flat out, so I'm slowly, as we go around lap after lap, getting a little bit quicker and a little bit more ballsy until I spin out again. And then each time you spin out, you have to go into the pit, and then the like management of racetrack comes to talk to you, and they're usually a little bit glib and a little bit like, you fucked up, didn't you? And so you're like, yeah, I did. And they're like, so how are you going to not do that again? And you're like, I don't know, drive slower. And they're like, that's right. You know, they're like kind of like on your ass about it. So we have a conversation with the pit crew or however, and Chris is like, I'll get in and I'll drive and I'll show you how to do it. I'm like, great. You know, a little bit nervy. Somebody's driving my car really hard. I don't want it to break. But we do the 110 mile an hour straight, and he's getting ready to go through this corner at full speed. I mean, granted, like a little bit of braking, especially there was the GoPro footage. There's a car like right in front. And the first thing I think on the GoPro is, oh God, Hamish, you have no brakes at all. And like from then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to like gaslight Chris. So like the entire time going through the rest of the track, he's trying to hit these corners and do like correct braking and stuff. And he's like, dude, you have nothing. And I'm like, I don't know. It seemed like you slowed down just fine for me. Long story short, I have manual brakes. The engine that I put in my car, physically, you cannot fit a booster in the stock location. Some people relocate the booster to like up behind the headlights and put like a bunch of linkages and stuff there. I removed it and opted for the manual brake setup. It's come to light that the way that I initially set it up when I was but 21 perhaps was not the best. It kept the stock like brake pressure valve reducer for the rear brakes, so that's definitely brake pressure that I'm losing. And my theory is that with that brake pressure reducer valve, you have 2 pistons in this pedal setup. Two masters. One master does the front brakes, one master does the rear brakes. If the rear brake master pressure is being restricted, then it's unlikely that the pedal that's pushing on both of these masters is going to be able to give meaningful force also to the front brake master. Trying to be hoping you're following. So there's kind of like a question of like,
can't you just put a brake proportioning valve, like a dial to adjust pressure front to rear?
So they do sell a knob that goes, there's the whole assembly of these pedals. It's one pedal pushes on 2 masters, and it pushes on the center of a bar that goes to the 2 masters, and that bar is all thread. And so you'd put a knob there and the thread would dial one way or the other. So when you push on the pedal, it puts a little bit more force on the front or rear. So you can adjust bias that way. But your boy put a pressure reducing valve on the rear brakes. So whatever's going on is not ideal. And then there's also when I set it up, did I set up that all thread to have the correct spacing between the 2 masters and the clevis and the pedal? Am I getting binding? This is a pedal box in a super modified car. It is it's universally, for people that put this engine or put V8s into E30s, universally like one of the worst parts of the job, one of the worst parts of the swap. You have to be upside down, head underneath the pedals while you're installing it, and it's looking like I'm going to have to remove those. Refab brake lines, which I've done before, that's okay, but still sucks. Bypass that pressure reducing valve, take out the pedals, readjust it, and then I think I will get that brake bias knob and start to really work on brake bias adjustment. Really quick, and another thing, you choose your master pedal or your brake master bore size, master cylinder bore size, and I think typically it's like 5/8 of an inch, which gives you more travel and it's an easier brake feel. However, if you go to bigger brakes down the line, larger pistons, you would get like too much travel and it would kind of be too easy. So you want to size your bore to the brakes that you'll be using. I did an oversized bore with the intention of doing a big brake kit down the line. So I'm already dealing with borderline no travel on my pedal and extremely high forces because I went for an oversized bore and I'm running stock brakes. So it's like this kind of many moving parts, and you hope that the easiest solution is that brake pressure reducing valve. I think that's going to be like the first thing that I hit. And then if I don't see improvement after that, I'll probably start looking at the way that the pedals are setting up in my brake bias. The balance bar is what Willwood calls it. And then I'm talking with some friends who are developing a big brake kit for the E30 as well. But it's actually really nice to hear that like the brakes are an issue. It's not driver error, like you go around a lap and you're like, the only reason I'm slow is because of me. But I can blame it on the car, and I'm also just benching it until I get the brakes sorted.
Yeah, well, I can relate. I once modified a Type 44 Audi with a big wastegate spring in the turbo and chip in the engine computer, and didn't do anything with brakes or suspension, and very quickly realized this is bad. These brakes on this old Audi were not adequate at all, and I gradually started upgrading the brakes with stainless steel lines. Replace the brake pressure booster that was called, people used to refer to it as a bomb because it looked like a little grenade. The brake pressure accumulator. That's it.
Yeah.
And so it turned out there's all this other stuff going on besides more power, baby. Yeah. And suspension and brakes and tires. And after throwing in, I worked for I threw so much money away on this car. I eventually just sold it. For so much less than all the money I put in, and I vowed to never do that again, because it turns out it's easier to make power than it is to deal with the suspension and the brakes and the tires and the wheels and dial all the rest in. And this was my daily too, so it was really the level of ridiculousness financially was very bad. But welcome to adulthood, where you realize it's not just about more power, baby. It's about brakes and suspension.
Yeah, it's
but you could fix it, right? Like you're still young.
It's not a daily as well, so I'm not like reliant on it. Yeah. I can take it out of commission for forever if I wanted to. Those Type 44s, I just looked them up. They're sweet. I think we had one at the shop for a while. The inline 5s.
That's where it should be. Is at the shop.
Yeah, we had like an all-wheel drive one, and
yeah, the inline
really
5, cool. The turbos, they were developed. Audi developed. They were part of the Group B racing heritage, and the engines were the same, so you could really modify them and produce 1,000 horsepower and have it be, in theory, reliable. But anyway, I don't want to go down the Audi Type 44 rabbit hole, because we could have a whole hour-long podcast on that, given how much time and energy I used to invest in my Audi days. I since have wised up after 7 or 8 or whatever number of Audis. Okay, are you feeling complete with your share, Hamish?
I'm complete. I think just on the back. We did a wastegate on the same Audi, actually. At some point, Will, one of the guys did, yeah. And it had like... mod. Locking differentials, so you could do like donuts and then lock it into all-wheel drive. Really cool car. Yeah,
it was a cool car. They are very cool cars. How is your weight balance with that big V8 in that car? Your front and rear weight balance?
I don't have corner scales. So the best I can do is like take what the stock car was, and I think it was like 51 front, 49 back. And that's with like a iron block engine. So the weight, like,
why aren't you just taking it to CAT scales for like $8? They'll put you on the front and rear plates, and at least you'll have front and rear bias.
I didn't know they had front and rear. I went to Waste Management and I got like the whole car weighed, but I didn't know they had front and rear.
Go to a CAT scale, and you'll stop with your front wheels on the front plates, your back wheels on the back plates. You download the app before you get there. You punch in the code for $8. It'll tell you how much the front and rear of the car weighs.
Yeah. Okay. It's like
there's a problem.
I think it's like 200 pounds heavier in the front.
Oh.
Like, because it's aluminum engine versus the iron stock one, so it's like already kind of.
I bet you when you weigh it, you'll be surprised.
Oh yeah. And the big brakes are probably like super needed. Anyhow, over to you. Yeah.
All right. Well, my Carveout is nothing to do with racing cars, and everything to do with taking time to enjoy the Colorado summer, enjoy regional events, and also spend time with family. So if you follow my social media, you may have noticed, at least in the stories, that I've been out of town a little bit. I was at Element 11, which is a Burning Man regional event where I volunteered as a ranger, and then was in Steamboat visiting with my wife's family and niece and nephews on that side. And then after a few days of that, hopped a flight and went to Cape Cod for my sibling reunion, which we try to do every year. We got to see all the nieces and nephews on my side for pretty much a week, and it was overall a fantastic trip. I feel so lucky to be able to spend that time, to enjoy that time, to have Colorado summer at Steamboat Lake, which is, I mean, what a perfect spot to spend time with family. You got to book early, but it's great.
Is it like permitted?
It's a permanent campground. Okay. It's owned by the state. And there's not a lot of, like, I would call commercial riffraff stuff happening, and not a lot of, like, buy. You're just camping and car camping. It's super easy. The lake is great for stand-up paddle boards or dinghy sailing, fishing from the lake, running around the lake. It's just a great family place to go camping. So we did that, and then we stayed in a town called Dennis in Cape Cod, and my family rented a big family house and housed all of us, which is a lot of people. But the youngest niece was 6, the oldest nephew is 20, and watching just the two of them interact was so sweet. But the reason I wanted to bring this back is that bring this back to the pod topics, bringing this back to real estate briefly, and that is, I don't know how some agents take time off. And a lot of them, their social media field is filled with their time off adventures. And all I can think is that I never leave town without a plan. And that plan involves coverage that we pay for. And it might be staff that are licensed, like Hamish, you are licensed to do showings, and you're part of every deal, so you see so many contracts and so much in our negotiations. Yeah. So you have such familiarity, but I also know I'm available to write an offer. And if it's for a more, like, I travel with Starlink, if it's a more substantive time period where I'm not going to be available to write offers, I make sure we have someone who's experienced from our team who can step in and handle negotiations, that does that primarily, and can act as an advisor. But I often wonder, how do other agents do this? And what was really funny is, at a closing this week, I was chatting with our closer, who I won't mention her name. She's lovely, but she's also the closer for a very prolific agent in town who's got about 10 years more experience than I do. And I asked her, because she had a bunch of closings with him, why this agent had recently joined a team with other agents. And I'm not mentioning any names here, but I was kind of surprised by that, as being primarily a solo operator with an assistant for a really long time. He suddenly has switched to a team with 3 very well-established senior agents. And she said, on one hand, that they complement each other in terms of their client base. Like who they're attracting as clients are very different types of people, but also because this person wants to have more time away and wants a team of people that can handle it. And he does not want that to be rookies, people with not a lot of experience. And I thought, exactly, that's what we've got on our team. And dealing with an agent that wants to join that doesn't have substantive experience, that's not going to fly. We need people that know what they're doing. It doesn't mean that they don't seek advice. Like, we are always learning in this organization. Like, there's so much to learn about real estate and transactions and humans and how we behave is that's the deepest topic ever. Yeah. And all of that benefits our clients. But it was just, the reason I brought that up is that I was like, well, that's exactly what we have, is that nobody on the team leaves without adequate coverage in place from other members of the team.
Yeah.
And knowing how we're going to handle it. And the principle is, if you're buying a house, you should never miss it because your client's on vacation, because your agent's on vacation, right? You should never miss an opportunity to get a showing in. And that typically should be within 24 hours of the listing being available. You should be able to get in there, and preferably the first day. That's really the gold standard. And same thing from a sell side perspective. Like, you should never be out of pocket where you can't receive an offer and can't respond to an offer and communicate with your clients. And the number of times on the other side I hear, well, I was out of town, couldn't get to the offer you submitted, or can you make this response deadline 3 days because I'm traveling? I'm like, well, you're traveling somewhere without internet? Like, how is this happening? But I get it, right?
There's this saying.
No, go ahead.
There's a saying that, like, if the business is slow, leave town. And so agents know this saying and then still leave town without a plan. Yeah.
Well, we want to have a life, right? Like, we have family, we have friends, and people that work normal jobs, they don't work on the weekends and at night. And real estate I feel like is 70%, 80% nights and weekends. Totally. When the deals actually happen, when you need to be available to negotiate, when you need to be available to submit an offer, there's no shortcut to that. And it sucks for our friends and our family that we sometimes have to stand, we have to miss things.
Yeah.
Or you need a plan. And this is one of the most important questions to ask an agent you're interviewing is, what's their plan for when they're not available due to a family obligation? They should go, if they're good human beings, okay? They need to take care of their family.
Yeah.
In fact, if I had talked to an agent and they said to me, if I was a buyer or a seller, and they said to me, I don't care about them, man. My number one priority is you, my client. I'm gonna not go to a wedding. I'm not gonna go to a funeral. I'm gonna miss my kid's ball game to be with you. I would probably not choose this agent because I think they're lying, and if they're not lying, they're morally corrupt.
I'd also feel terrible.
Their priorities are backwards.
Yeah.
And so I think the better answer is, I will communicate with you if I'm going to be out of town. I will always have a plan, and the plan involves a very experienced team. These are not rookies in this industry.
Yeah.
And they are competent. They have integrity. And they have great communication. We will not drop balls because I'm out of pocket. You may not know every time I'm leaving town for a weekend because I don't need to stress you out, but I guarantee you either I will be available the same way I am now on the phone or video, very close to it, or I will have coverage so that you are very well taken care of. And I will always be your primary point of contact. You're not getting shunted to a second person. Like, that's the thing that some people get, is they get the team that does not have the competence of the primary agent on it. And that's something you should be wary of. So it doesn't hurt to interview team members too, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. That's what I had to say.
No, I think
I'm back.
Pretty good. Welcome back. I mean, shoot, we're even playing with the idea of podcasts while you're out and about and continuing that. So if we have that's true. It's why the podcast has not been live for the last 3 weeks, is because of these events. And doing it remotely from a van, at Burning Man doesn't seem like a great idea. That one probably not, yeah.
Well, the other thing is, it's nice to just be out of pocket and not have my brain space here. So probably not going to create content while I'm doing other things. I think it's not a good or healthy way to experience life.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So summer lovin'. we are here. I'm here in Boulder, at least for the next 6 weeks, attending one wedding. Otherwise, we should have a pretty regular podcast schedule for most of the rest of summer.
Yeah, should do. It's been a journey. We're glad you're back, Osman. Oh, shout out to one of the attendees at the 700 Poplar Ave open house I hosted not too long ago. It was great to meet you and chat to you, and hopefully you're stoked with the release of this podcast. I know you were waiting for the next one, so here it is.
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We're doing our best to be more entertaining, and now we're over 2 hours on this one. So, Hamish, it's time to wrap it up.
Yes, it sure is. Dear listener, thank you very much for coming along with us on the Summer Lovin' podcast. We make content outside of podcasts as well on the House Einstein Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook, even YouTube, House Einstein. We've got neighborhood tours, our listing videos that we allude to all the time on this podcast. You can go check that out. All sorts of resources, whether you're not buying or selling, check out the website, houseeinstein.com. And if you're new here, subscribe, like, follow, and if you can, leave a review. 5 stars only, please.
Hamish, are you going to tell them about our Patreon or our merch store?
Soon. Coming soon. We're feeling demand right now.
I think we actually could sell House Einstein hats and T-shirts pretty easily.
Be able to.
We have a fan base.
The LP.
We already have them designed.
The LP 101, this style hat is one of my favorites. If we can get the House Einstein logo on that.
I just don't want to be doing fulfillment. So if you have, if in your spare time, if you
LP 101,
if you feel, I see that the LP 101. If you want to get on the merch store, I'm totally down with it. I think it's hilarious.
It'd be a lot of fun,
and would be fun. Yeah. All right.
Well, stay tuned.
Spare time.
In the spare time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us at the House Einstein podcast. You know where to find us if you need us, and we'll see you next time.